Hey everybody, I'm your host for Daimon Lowry, for Lowry Sports Rhetoric today. Going through a little pre-draft thoughts on who the Bears might take, what positions we're looking for, what players might be available at those positions, the different draft picks, and what we might look for from polls as a draft philosophy based on the things that he's done and said so far. Also, at the end, I will give a real quick mock of just the Bears picks that I think is a realistic mock, although it's kind of best case scenario. Um, so to start with, I just based on what we've seen in free agency, they're obviously planning to rebuild. He's talked about building it right, not trying to rush it, and I think that we've seen that in free agency. He's patient. They're bringing people in that can play, but they're not spending a whole lot of money, and they're not going for the home runs yet. I expect the same thing to happen in the draft. Um, a lot of BPA, looking for people that fit their philosophy, which is what they've done so far. Both offense and defense. It seems like, we always heard with Nagy and Pace that they were on page with each other and all this kind of stuff, but I feel like in the short amount of time that we've seen from polls and everything else, that they actually are in sync with what you would think that they would do. Everybody that they've picked up so far seems to fit the systems on both offense and defense. So I expect that from the draft as well. There's been some rumors about trying to pick up a first round pick, trying to trade for different players. I don't see any of that happening. I think if anything, they will trade back and get more picks because this is a deep draft. Polls values building through the draft is what he said. And so, if anything, I think the only kind of trades that we'll make is trading back, probably either that first or second round pick. That's where they're going to get the most bang for your buck. There's a lot of guys in the fourth round that I think would fit what the Bears are trying to do. So, maybe trading back out of that second or, back several spices to pick up an extra fourth or maybe even two extra fourths makes a lot of sense. So, but for the sake of this conversation, we won't worry about that. What the Bears have is they have two second round picks, the 39th overall and the 48th overall, a third round pick, the 79th overall, and then two fifths and a sixth. So I'm going to kind of approach it like two different groups. The two seconds and the third is going to be your front of the draft picks, the two fifths and the sixth, the back end of the draft picks. Kind of split up things that way. So going through the positions, I think we're obviously at this point they're all in on Fields, and they just signed Trevor Siemian to be his backup. So quarterback seems fine. At least I don't expect them to do anything more with that position. Running back, I think we're in really good shape with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. I think those are two really good running backs. They also signed a fullback, which seems like So I think the backfield is pretty set. Maybe get a couple of undrafted free agents or something like that for a third running back if necessary. But I can't see with the limited amount of picks we have using a pick on one of those. Wide receiver, obviously we got Mooney. They signed Pringle. That's two. Need a lot more than that. I like Chaz Newsome. I think he has some potential. The other guys they brought in, I think, are just camp bodies, to be honest with you, but maybe one will surprise. So I expect them to take one or two wide receivers in this draft. I think it's a very deep draft, so it wouldn't surprise me if I know a lot of people are hyped about the receivers in the second round. If it's me and I'm polls and he's as conservative as he says he is, I would wait until the fifth round to get guys because I think there's guys in the fifth round that could be impact players, and you have so many needs for this team. I think you wait and get the number one wide receiver in free agency next year or in the draft next year. This year, you're just looking for depth and looking for who's going to be my number two. Is it going to be Pringle? Is it going to be a guy I can get in the fifth round? The way Mooney ended up being, I think that's probably what they'll end up doing, even though I don't think very many Bears fans are going to be happy with that plan. Tight end, I think there's some good picks in the tight end, and if we trade back and get more extra picks, maybe go for a tight end. But Kmet is obviously our number one. They've signed a couple in the offseason. Griffin is a solid enough one that I don't think we have to have one of those, but there are some ones that I think will complement Kmet very well if we get some extra picks. Offensive line, obviously, that's where our biggest needs are. At the moment, I think we're short a starting tackle and a starting guard both, and then depth we could use too. I don't know how much they'll pick up in this draft. I feel like the line's kind of top heavy, so if you don't get them early, I don't think there's a whole lot of starters past the second round, honestly. So I guess we'll see how that goes. On the defensive side of the ball, I feel like we're set at the rush. That I see a lot of mock draft people talking about getting an edge rusher because we lost Khalil Mack, but I don't think that's necessary. We signed Muhammad. We have Quinn, which I don't believe we're trading Quinn. A lot of people have speculated that. I don't think that's going to happen. And then we got Tashawn Gibson is a nice backup to those guys. So I think that's a good three-man rotation on the edge. So we should be fine. Defensive tackle, I think that's a big. That's still we need one more. We signed the one kid. What was his name? Thomas. What is his name? After the injury situation that came up, then we signed the Justin Jones. That's his name. That's what I'm trying to think of. But I don't think that's enough. I think we're going to need another defensive tackle at some point in this draft, or in free agency still. Or who knows? Maybe they still go with the guy from the Bengals that was injured. Maybe they still make a deal with him just at a lesser price because of the injury, and maybe that's the way they go. Linebacker, I like Morrow as a signing as a will linebacker. He looks really good for that position as a value signing. And Smith obviously is an all-pro level player, but I think we're going to need another linebacker. There's guys out there that we could get in free agency, but we haven't signed them yet. At safety, I think obviously Jackson as your center field safety is set, and I think maybe with a new coaching staff and a new role, maybe we can get back to the Jackson that we had early on before he got the big contract and stopped performing at a high level. I think the way that the Colts defense was set up, they like to have ball hawks and turnover people, and I think he'll be in a role where his strengths will be well suited for that. But I don't think we have a strong safety at this point, and there are some that we could get in this draft. So hopefully, maybe that can get addressed in the draft. Corner, I don't know what to think about the corner. There's corners in this draft that are pretty good, but I feel like they're early, and I don't know that that's the best value for our situation. Johnson's going to be a great corner for a while. That's our main guy, obviously. I think Graham could be a potential building block that could get there, but he maybe is another year or two away. The one that they got, the Tavon Young, I feel like he's a good slot corner, and that's probably the role he'll have. I think we have we have a couple of backups for that slot corner position. So to me, I don't know. There's a lot of corners out there in the market. Maybe you just sign a veteran after the draft, and don't worry about corner unless one slides to you late that you weren't expecting. But I feel like everybody needs corners, and there's not enough to go around in this draft. So I don't know that we'll. Again, maybe if we trade back and get extra picks, that's where maybe we can get a corner then. But I don't know with just having 6 if that'll be a pressing need, at least in my mind. But anyway, okay. So with that first group of second and third round picks, I'm looking at offensive tackle. I think Travis Smith from Tulsa would be a great pickup. Rasheed Walker from Penn State's another guy that could be there. That would do what we want them to do, like be able to do that West Coast style of offensive as tackles. If we don't go that route, maybe we go interior line. I think Kenyon Green and Cole Strong, maybe even Ed Ingram from LSU would be guys that would be guards that could play that role, that would be there in the late second, maybe third round for some of those guys. Wide receiver, there's Watson, Moore, Dotson, Mechie are all guys that I think we could get in the second round. I don't know. Maybe Watson goes in the first even. Maybe we don't get him. If we don't use one of the 2 seconds going into the third, I think Pickens and Pierce are good options there. Maybe even Jalen Tolbert, or Calvin Austin from Memphis. These are all the big name receivers that everybody's talking about. Again, I'm not sure that that's the route we go, but there's a lot of talent there. I think you could easily get a number 2 to be next to Mooney, or maybe even some of those guys could develop into number 1s. But we'll see if that's what they choose to do. I think defensive tackle, obviously, that was what Poles used the big first money signing on, and I think he adjusted well to get the Jones kid. But I still don't think that that's the guy. This defense. the defenses that have run this style that have been really good over the years have had, like, whether it was Warren Sapp or for the Bears, Tommy Harris. Even with the Colts, they traded for Buckner because you need that disruptor in the middle. And I think there's a couple of guys like that you could get in the second round. I like Travis Jones from UConn, DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M. Really like him a lot. Pierre Winfrey and maybe even Ferdarian Mathis are guys that could be there in that second round, or maybe even with a third round pick, to give us that disruptor in the line that could really be a force for this defense for the next 10 years and make it easier for those linebackers and for those ends, which I think is part of what the defense needs. Speaking of linebacker, I think that's another one that we're going to need to get, one other linebacker. I mean, we don't have 3 starting linebackers, and even if we did, we could use some depth. So I like in the second and third round, there's some really good linebackers in this. I think Chad Muma from Wyoming probably remind a lot of people of Brian Urlacher if he puts on a little bit more weight. He seems to be heading that direction. Looks like a fantastic player. Leo Chenal from Wisconsin is one that I really like. I think that he's the kind of player that the Bears fans would love. Like, he just blows people up, hits hard, and I think he could play that Sam in the Colts. The way the Colts used Darius Leonard, I think Leo Chenal could play that role, and then that would allow Smith to go back to stay at his natural Mike position, which people like Smith for the Sam, and I think he could do it. But why not have him at the Mike and just a beast of a player with Chenal at the Sam? I think he could do that. If you're looking at safety, I like Lewis Sine, Jaquan from Georgia, Jaquan Brisker from Penn State, Nick Cross from Maryland, and Brian Cook from Cincinnati. Those are all in the box hitters that can punish people, and should be there in that second to third round range. So if that's the way they want to go, solidify the secondary that way. And I think that all those guys are ball hawk types that could cause turnovers, get interceptions, cause fumbles, and really hit people and punish people. Corner, like I said, there's a couple that work as zone corners that could be there in the second round, maybe with Tariq Woolen and Martin. Tariq Woolen from UTSA, which is he's a really interesting prospect, or Martin Emerson from Mississippi State, are two guys that I think could possibly be there in the second or third round for us, that would be able to be zone corners in this system. But I don't know though you want to waste the capital on that. So that's kind of the guys that I'm looking at in those first 2 rounds, those first 3 picks that we have. The second group of 3 picks, we're talking about the 2 5s and the 6, a little thinner, less options. Not really seeing a whole lot on the offensive line at that point. Maybe polls as a lineman, and maybe the scouts find people that I'm not seeing. It's not really my strong suit anyway. But I'm not really seeing a whole lot of value there. So I don't know that they go that route. That's why I think you probably have to get one of those linemen early. Tight end, there's a couple. There's I think Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin and Daniel Bellinger from San Diego State are 2 guys that might be able to slide to the 5th. And you can maybe pick those guys up, and they'd be nice backups for Cole Kmet, guys that can block but also give you something in the receiving game. So I like those options if you decide to do that. But again, with only having 6 picks, I don't know. That's probably if we trade, then maybe that becomes an option if we have more picks. But with 6, I don't know why you would go that route. Wide receiver, I love the wide receiver options that are there. I think there's definitely lots of guys that could be available. Some of my favorites are Romeo Dows, Bo Melton. Romeo Dows is from Nevada, Bo Melton from Rutgers. They might go in the 4th round, but they might be able to slide to us in the 5th. I like Kyle Phillips is another one from UCLA, great slot guy. A guy I really love, Jarrett Stearns from Western Kentucky. I think he has a chance to be like the next Steve Smith, where he's a smaller guy, but he's got kind of like a chip on his shoulder and surprises people. Danny Gray, speedster from SMU, I really like. I think all those guys could be there in the 5th round. And then 6th round, my guy, this is maybe my big sleeper that I love. The more I watch him, the interviews I've seen from him, I just love this kid. Tanner Connor from Idaho State. He's a 6'3", 220-pound receiver that has a track background, runs tremendously well. Wasn't really utilized at Idaho State very much, but I really love him as a potential sleeper that we could get late and could maybe even end up being a number 1 receiver down the road, or at the very least a nice boundary stretch the field guy that could take some pressure off of Mooney because you and the underneath guys because you have to stretch the field to stay with him. Then when we go to the defensive side of the ball, defensive line, there's a couple guys. John Ridgway from Arkansas or Eric Johnson from Missouri State are a couple of guys that might be able to provide that pressure in the middle, and they might still be there at the 5th round. I think Ridgway probably 4th, but maybe he'll still be the 5th. Eric Johnson is more of a sleeper role. We'll see what they do. I still think we need depth at that too, so we'll probably go that route. Linebackers, I didn't really find linebackers in the 5th round that I liked. I think if we're going to get a linebacker that can start and play right away, then it's going to have to come earlier. I did find some safeties that I like in the 5th round. Kirby Joseph, I have him as a potential 5th rounder, but he seems to be going up the draft board, so he might not still be there. He's from Illinois. I know the Bears have interviewed him. There's a couple sleepers, though. There's Sterling Williford as a safety who maybe even could become a linebacker. He's kind of a big hitter type from Miami of Ohio. Smoke Monday from Auburn. That kid can hit. He plays with the chip. I think he'd be very interesting in the role that he could serve in this defense. And then Marcus Bell from Florida A&M. I really love this kid. He's like 6'2", 6'3"-ish, like 220, 230 range. Like from Florida A&M, historically black college, tore people up down at that level. Was just crushing people. I think he has a lot of upside. Even was kind of a coverage guy, so he could play slot, maybe cover tight ends pretty well in that safety role, but still just hit people and cause turnovers. Ball hawking machine. So I really like him. At the corner position, I see only a couple. These are more small school guys that I liked. There's a Joshua Williams from Fayetteville State and Jacoby Durant from South Dakota State are some corners that I think could be there in the 5th round. They're big corners. They can play the zone coverage pretty well. They struggle in man, but I don't think that that's what is asked in this defense. So maybe they're guys that we could get late that other teams aren't looking for because of the weaknesses that would fit the system well and could play that role. So with that said, this is, I ran through a mock draft where Nate and I will be doing a mock draft. Those videos will be coming out later, but I kind of did my run through so I could see where I thought the Bears would get. And this is what I came up with, my best case scenario mock draft for us. I had the Bears getting in the 2nd round, Travis Smith, tackle from Tulsa. Love this kid. I think he's, worst case scenario, he's an all-pro level guard. I think he could be a left tackle or a right tackle, either one. I like the idea of drafting him now. Maybe signing a left tackle like Eric Fisher's out there. I've talked about him on my free agent draft. He's still out there. Sign him. Play this kid at guard right away. Play Tevin. Why am I blanking on his last name? Jenkins from last year's draft. Play him at right tackle. Let these guys go, and then by the end of the year, maybe if you could sign, especially if you could sign Fisher to a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal, in a year or two, then you decide who's the left tackle between Smith and Jenkins, who's the right tackle. I think you'd have your 2 tackles set. And it gives you kind of push down the road, getting that other guard. I think that would be a great way for them to get this line up to snuff real quick. With that second number 2 pick, I kind of mentioned him earlier. Leo Chenal, linebacker. I love this kid. Love him. Play him at the Sam. Let Roshan play at the middle, at the Mike, and we are laying wood to people. That would be a fun defense to watch, especially in this system where I think they like to pressure with the defense, the front 4, and then with your linebackers, you're kind of cleaning up the run. These guys can hit. They can cover ground. They're speedsters. And I just realized something. I had Lee Chanel going with the 3rd pick because the 2nd round pick. That's why I spaced off for a second. With the 2nd round pick, we got second round pick. We got Travis Jones, which probably won't actually happen, but in my mock, he fell to us. He will be a fantastic 3-tech. Even can do nose tackle. He's a space eater, but also a penetrator from UConn. Love this kid. If we're not lucky enough to get him, I do think there's a couple other defensive tackles that we could get with that pick, but he's the one under the prime conditions that I like to get. So I know at this point you're probably pulling out your hair because I didn't get any wide receivers. I addressed that in the 5th round. A couple guys I love. Again, best case scenario draft. So wide receivers, I get Bo Melton. He would be fantastic in the slot for us. Playmaker, stream. I think this kid's got a lot of upside. Some people are sleeping on him. There's so many receivers in this class that he didn't have a good quarterback at Rutgers, but he can play, and I think that would be a fantastic pick. And then with the other 5th round pick I have is taking that safety from Florida A&M, Marquise Bell. And then in the 6th, the guy that I said I fell in love with, Tanner Connor. Big potential guy, huge upside. I think that solidifies our wide receivers for this year. We don't have to be stud wide receivers. This is a good year. Find out what Fields got, see if these guys can develop, and then address that next year when you have more cap space and a better draft pick. If you still need to find your number one, if you didn't find it in this draft. So I think that would solidify most of our positions. Your secondary would be in good shape. Offensive line would be in good shape. Linebacker core would be in good shape. We'd still need some depth, but with as many holes as this was, that was always going to be the case. I think they'll have plenty of room for this. This is a nice deep draft for drafted free agents. So we'll probably get a bunch of those. Maybe that's where they get some depth of the offensive line. Bring in a couple of those guys for the corner position. But as far as best value at the picks that we got, I think this is kind of what to expect from polls. This is where the value is from my point of view. And so I just hope that gave you some names to look forward to. I know these are the guys I'm going to be looking, hoping that we get. But there's a lot of guys in this draft, and it's a really deep draft. So I think we're probably going to be sort of happy no matter what. But then we're also going to be sort of upset no matter what because this team's not ready to contend yet. It's always going to be about building and being patient. And I know that's not me, and I don't think it's very many Bears fans. So, but that's what it is. Try to be patient. Hopefully these give you some names to be excited about for the future. And if you liked this vid, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Let us know that you liked it. Comment if you have any things, and we'll try to get back to you on that. Thank you for listening. Hope I entertained. See you next time.